Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Alison. I write as Ali Sinclair, Alison May and 50% of Juliet Bell, and here on YouTube I talk about writing and publishing and all things related. This week I'm in a little bit of an odd place writing wise, so I'm going to talk about that because essentially I'm a tiny bit stuck. I've had a bit of a pause on the book that I'm writing at the moment for external reasons. Firstly, I got COVID and then I went on holiday. Yay. So good reasons and not so good reasons. And then because of those two disruptions, I was very behind with other work. Other work, you say, Alison? Yes, other work. Pausing there to say that in my other work, I am also part of the team at Fiction Tutors, and we are a group of authors who provide writing courses, mentoring, manuscript critiques, and we have also just launched something absolutely fabulous called the Debut Author Club. The Debut Author Club is aimed at newly signed, newly contracted, newly agented, newly published authors, and we aim to help and support you through your first months or years in the publishing industry. Getting published kind of feels like the end of a very long race, but it's a very long race where you get straight across the finish line and discover that you're at the beginning of a much longer, much more complex race that nobody has ever really explained to you. And that's why the Debut Author Club exists. It's a subscription club. If it's relevant to you, I really highly recommend it. You get a week free, so you can dip into the group, see if you enjoy it, and then it's just £10 a month, so hopefully super affordable for a lot of people. Do check out the Debut Author Club. Back to the video. So, I'm a little bit stuck at the moment. I'm in a little bit of a hiatus. I've had this break, enforced break, because of health and being on holiday. And I'm kind of trying to come back to the manuscript this week, and it's Wednesday at the moment as I'm recording this. It'll be Friday when the video comes out. And so far I've written about 300 words, I think, in this week, which, given that I aim to write about 3,000 a day when I'm writing a first draft, is not brilliant. So let's talk about that. How do you deal with a stall? How do you get your head back into a manuscript if either you've had to take a break because of circumstances, or you've just hit one of those moments where you're just not feeling it and it's like wading through treacle and you just kind of don't know where to take the story next? I'm going to run through some of my suggestions for how to do that, and then I'm going to try and implement some of my suggestions for how to do that myself. Number one, probably most importantly, give yourself permission to write absolute rubbish. If you're writing a first draft, it doesn't have to be brilliant. It doesn't have to be great at the first, attempt. It almost certainly won't be great at the first attempt. So give yourself permission to risk getting it wrong. I think one of the reasons that sometimes we get a bit stilted and we get a bit stuck and we get a bit blocked is because we're trying to find the correct or the perfect way of telling a story rather than just getting the story out there. So number one, absolutely give yourself permission to write rubbish. And the little bit that I did manage to write today, just starting to chip my way back into the manuscript, was very much in that mindset. It was in a mindset of, I don't really know where this is going, but it needs to go somewhere, so so give yourself permission to write absolute rubbish. If you have had an enforced break and it's been longer than just a few days, it's a time investment to let yourself read through the whole manuscript again. That's what I did yesterday. I've got about 30,000 words so far, and I read those 30,000 words yesterday. And I would really recommend that. If you've had an enforced gap, or if you're just feeling really kind of detached from the manuscript, you're feeling like you've lost the shape of the story, read what you've already written, read your way back into it if you can't write your way back into it. You might be pleasantly surprised. You might, of course, be absolutely horrified, in which case, go back to point one and remind yourself that this is a first draft and it is okay if you've written absolute rubbish so far. All we're looking for is the sort of shape of the story. Having read through what I'd done so far, what I then did, and I think this is worthwhile, is I made myself a little list of the sort of unanswered questions from the first part of the manuscript. What had I set up that I hadn't yet come back to? What had I set up that I hadn't addressed? What questions had I put in the reader's mind? Now, some of those questions I didn't even know I'd put out there. They were entirely subconscious. I don't write with a big plan, so I quite often write stuff that I had no idea was coming. So I had questions there that I had no idea I was trying to set up and hadn't really remembered that I had set up. But that's quite a good way of giving yourself some ideas of what the next scenes might be. Having done that, I like to not plan, but just give myself kind of scene headings for the next maybe 2 or 3 scenes at a go. So I'll write, get to a point where I don't know what happens next, and then I'll sit back and kind of go, okay, I need a scene where this happens, a scene where this happens, a scene where this happens, and then I'll write those scenes. And even that level of planning I don't necessarily stick to. Sometimes all that planning will be, oh, we haven't seen that point of view character for a while, I need a scene from that point of view character's perspective. And I write the scene to find out what that character is doing. I don't know until I've written it. I just go, oh, we haven't seen X for a while. We need a scene with X in it to see what X is up to. And then I find out what X is up to by writing it. But having identified those, what questions have we set up? What questions have we put in the reader's mind? That gives me a framework to kind of go, okay, where will we go next? And I'm only at 30,000 words, so I don't necessarily want to start answering those questions yet, but I might want to start fleshing them out. I might want to start making them a bit more complicated. I might want to answer a couple, maybe they're red herrings, but those answers are going to lead on to some bigger questions. So that's where I'm at the moment. I've got a busy next couple of days. I'm going to London tomorrow from my point of view, yesterday from your point of view, for a book launch for my very good friend and former mentee. I never know whether mentee is a word. She's a person I mentored, which I think technically makes her a mentee, but it sounds a bit clunky. Anyway, Emma Claire Wilson, this child of mine, her novel is out tomorrow, which I'm very excited about. So I'm going along to her book launch. And then I'm meeting some writing friends, including Janet, my former co-writer and partner in Fiction Tutors in London. So again, that's going to be disrupted time. But one thing I'm going to try really hard to do tomorrow and Friday is write on the train. I'm going to take my laptop, I'm going to take a small laptop, a little Chromebook with me that I take when I travel, so that I can write on the train. Because what I want now that I've done that work to bring my brain back into the story and to kind of reacquaint myself with the story and get some ideas for what might happen next, I don't want to lose that again. I don't want to have another 2 days, 3 days, 4 days away from the manuscript and then find myself next Monday back going, oh, I hadn't really got my head back into this yet, have I? Ugh. So now I have got my head a bit of the way back into it. I really want to keep it there. So I'm determined I'm going to try and write on both of my train journeys over the next couple of days. Wish me luck. I'm not always very good at working on trains. Sometimes I do, and then sometimes I just really don't at all. But I have good intentions this time, so fingers crossed. So that's just a little update, a little where I am with my writing. We're going to finish the video with some very, very quick book reviews because I've been on holiday, so I read some books on holiday. And if you wait there, I will tell you what they were. So we have reviews of 3 books that I have read recently, and we're covering across a range of genres. So we are starting with Yours Cheerfully, Yours Cheerfully by A.J. Pierce. This is the second novel from A.J. Pierce. This is the sequel to her debut, which was called Dear Mrs. Bird. This is set during the Second World War in London, and our main character, Emmeline, works for a magazine on the problem page. These books are absolutely delightful, and the main thing that's delightful about them is the voice and the tone that they're written in. I know that AJ has done huge amounts of research looking at women's magazines from the 1940s. She absolutely loves those, and she has that slightly cut glass, jolly hockey sticks, make do and mend, best foot forward tone in her writing beautifully. And because she has that quite light, quite stiff upper lip sort of tone, she actually deals in this book with some quite serious issues about women's rights, about the impact of war on women, about women's work during the war period. So yeah, this is great. Really enjoyed. Much recommend. If you haven't read the first one, you don't need to read the first one before you read this, but I would. So the first in the series is Dear Mrs. Bird, and then this is Yours Cheerfully, and I believe the third book in the series has just come out in hardback. Following on from that, we have Scotlander by Sheila McClure. A few months ago, I reviewed The Breakup Agency by the same author. Full disclosure, Sheila is a friend, but I absolutely love her writing. She writes super fun rom-coms. This is inspired by Outlander, but also has some like tiny kind of autobiographical elements, not so much in the story itself, but in the settings and the worlds that our heroine inhabits. So it's a contemporary rom-com set in Scotland and LA, inspired by Outlander. So imagine all of those things thrown into a big pot and mushed together with lots of warmth and lots of humour. Another big thumbs up, Scotlander. And finally, I read The Sanctuary by Andrew Hunter Murray. This is sort of dystopian near future sci-fi, bit of a sort of environmentalist edge, looking at how a society facing sort of ecological disaster might rebuild, and whether the attempt to do so will necessarily bring out the best instincts in people. In the world we're in at the moment, where it feels like a few billionaires have all the money and all the power and all the tendency to try to go to space and whatever is making them happy, this book feels really timely. I don't want to say too much about it because it would be really easy to give away spoilers, but the central character essentially goes on a journey to find his girlfriend, who is living on this supposedly perfect private island, and yeah, it all gets a bit more complicated than that. Again, Andrew Hunter Murray, some of you may know from podcasts No Such Thing as a Fish. He was QIL for a long time. He's performed with Ostentatious, who you may be familiar with. So a bit of a kind of polymath, interested in lots of things. It's also written for The Spectator, various other newspapers and magazines. And I don't mean The Spectator, I mean The New Statesman. Yeah, they're quite different, aren't they? Okay, now I'm going to have to read his bio to find out which I do mean. Hold on. Private Eye. Yeah, I meant Private Eye, which is, again, not even similar. I mean, yeah, perimenopause brain, what can you do? Yes, and he hosts Private Eye's podcast. This is his second novel. His first one, The Last Day, is, again, a sort of near-future dystopian thriller. I think The Last Day is a little bit pacier than this. So if you like a page-turner, maybe start with that one. This one maybe asks some slightly kind of bigger questions about humanity and about who we are and about how we react to crisis. So yeah, definitely both worth the look. Which you prefer is going to very much depend what you're looking for in your reads. Those are my super quick book reviews. I will be back next week with a new video where I might talk a little bit about book launches, as I'm going to one tomorrow. And I will see you next week.